Well, hello and welcome to the first ever Coaching Uncovered podcast. My name is Brent Davis and I will be your host for these sessions. And we're fortunate enough today to have Scott Williams with us. So he's my first ever guest and we're going to have some fun with this podcast. So hopefully it'll be nice and casual and a nice conversation going. So welcome, Scott. Please tell me about yourself.
Thank you very much. Oh, what an intro. You sound like you've done that before. Well, thanks, mate, for having me on as the first guest. It's maybe just a little bit more nervous than I expected. I don't know why. People probably won't ever go back to this episode, but
No, that's it.
So what do I say? So I'm an accredited exercise physiologist.
Okay.
Working in the field as a practitioner. I've got my own clinic. I also work here at the PJ Centre for Learning and Performance. So I'm here a couple of days a week at my own private clinic, a couple of days a week. Got a bunch of golfers that I see here and both at my clinic, and I guess, you know, golfers are everywhere. So as in traveling around a lot, so I'll catch them wherever I can, really, in terms of the players that are, you know, trying to make a living out of it. I'm also doing a PhD.
Yeah, cool.
And my research is specifically on golf performance. So kind of all ties in nicely. My clinic is down in Sorrento, so it's kind of down on the peninsula where there's nothing but golf courses and wineries.
Yep, true.
And the odd beach. So it all kind of ties in well, but I guess as we get sort of talking, you got some questions for me.
I have got some questions, and we'll certainly cover off on those areas you brought up straight away.
Yeah. So my route into golf was sort of not necessarily planned.
Okay.
I'll start by saying that. Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's cool. Well, probably the first question for everyone out there, and also for me, is what is the difference between an exercise physiologist and, say, the old garden variety personal trainer?
Well, I've got to be careful because my brother's a personal trainer, and there's nothing wrong with personal trainers. So basically, it just means I went to university and did a degree, and now you need a master's, an applied master's as well to become an accredited exercise physiologist, which then means that we can do Medicare funded work, we can do work cover work, TAC funded work, Department of Veteran Affairs funded work, and in a sense, the role of an exercise physiologist can be anywhere between tackling chronic disease with patients alongside physiotherapists and diabetes educators. So we're an allied health practitioner, basically. So the GPs have a network of allied health practitioners that they can refer to, either funded or privately funded, so Medicare funded or privately funded. And we're just one of those. And our job is to provide exercise regimes for people so that they can ideally self-manage themselves. But often, you know, I'll be training people in a small group, and it's sort of, I find supervised works quite well. So I haven't explained what a personal trainer is, but I guess most people generally know what one is. But it's more of it's a certificate to do a personal training course, and there's nothing wrong with that. In fact, it's a great way for people to start out in the industry, I think. And then potentially continue on and go to university and end up, doing what I do. But not that they need to, but there's a bit of a distinction to the naked eye. If you were to walk into my clinic and look at what I'm doing and what a personal trainer who, you know, we've got personal trainers that work at our clinic right next to me, may be indistinguishable on a given day. So,
but certainly that background training that you've done, as opposed to a 12-month Cert 4 course or a 12-month qualification,
or a 6-week one.
I think
chopped them back a bit now, haven't they?
They think they've cracked down on those ones a little bit more these days.
Good idea.
But you've done a 4-year degree in that field.
Yeah, well, I mean, we're going to get into that, but my path. So I'm in my early 40s, and my path was quite different to what you would do now. So long and convoluted, not a clear path. So basically, when I completed my first degree in 1998, there was no Medicare funding for exercise physiology. It wasn't an accredited. We didn't have a regulated body, so we weren't basically allied health practitioners yet, even though we did try and distinguish ourselves from personal trainers. It was really just, hey, I went to uni, that guy didn't. I'm better, I think. Maybe I wasn't, but I had more of a qualification. Whereas since 2006, we've been on the Medicare funded work. So there's now, all of a sudden, all the universities jumped on board and aligned all of their education, so you could go degree and now masters. So it's sort of changed over the years. I think 5 or 6 years after I was out of uni. It was a grad dip that you needed, and
Yep.
then it kind of went from there. So
how does that work for you? And if you went through before that came about, do you get that accreditation? Even though you haven't technically done the...
Yeah, so I got accredited in 2002, I think it was.
Okay.
And I think a couple of years after that, there was what they called an amnesty.
Yep.
Where they basically said all of those who are basically working or wish to work in the role as an exercise physiologist, but haven't gone and done the extra accreditation that we're expecting you to do over the next few years, they can basically get accredited now and prove that they've actually had enough experience, etc. So there was an accreditation process for the grandfathers of the industry.
Yeah, definitely the starters.
And then basically since then it stepped up and stepped up and stepped up. 3 years after that, it was all of a sudden it was a legitimate career pathway.
Yeah.
But since then I've gone back and I'm doing it. I did an honours and I'm doing a PhD anyway. So
yeah, for sure.
I've kind of picked my own path that way. But also I was probably feeling a bit guilty that I didn't have the masters, to be honest.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that pathway, your timeline is close to my golfing timeline.
Yeah.
So you were going to uni while I was hitting golf balls around there,
Exactly.
being a trainee golf pro. So that's definitely pretty cool. So your first role outside of study. So after you graduated, where was the first role you started?
I actually go back further than that. I would
okay.
go way back in time. I didn't want to go back into sort of, early childhood years, but probably don't have time. But I actually started in high school. My first part-time job was actually at a golf course.
Oh, was it? Okay.
Right.
Were you picking up golf balls at the driving range?
I did everything. I had my mates pinging balls at me, hitting one irons back when they had one irons. Nice and low, trying to get the gap in the cart that picks up the ball.
Target practice. It's always good fun.
And so I worked in a pro shop, worked on a driving range, worked on the ground stuff. Actually did a little bit of marketing towards the end when I went back and did a postgraduate business course.
Okay.
Just for a little bit. So I kind of worked in most departments of this resort, which is now Cape Schanck RACV.
Yep.
Which have done some really good stuff out there. So I worked there for 10 years. So through high school and university, I was sort of spending my weekends working and whatever, and school holidays working a bit more, etc.
Yep.
At a golf course, and not thinking anything of it. It was a great job, hard to leave.
Okay.
Like
you're outside in the sunshine. You're out there on the golf course all the time.
I knew it. I knew when I was leaving that life was going to change. Not to say that everyone's job at a golf course is easy, far from it, but I guess I had the cushier roles. So I did that, and then finished my first lot of uni, went and got a job at a gym.
Okay.
Went and got a job at a gym.
Is that kind of the standard role that someone like you would
Back
go
then.
into? Yeah.
Back then,
Go straight into
there was no accredited exercise physiologist around then, so it was I really just played the role of personal trainer with a degree.
Yep.
And to be completely honest, wasn't super skilled practically from what I did in my degree.
Okay.
So was really like, wow, I've got all this knowledge, but I don't feel like I know how to use it. And interestingly, the thing that I felt probably got me through that first tough 6 months when you're in a work environment, working with clients and trying to look like you know what you're doing. My work in hospitality at the golf course was probably the only thing that actually got me through that, because
having that personality, I suppose.
Yeah, you learn a lot trying to keep people happy, I guess.
Yeah,
don't you?
definitely.
Yeah.
I say similar stuff to trainee pros, and I was the same when I first came out. You do your traineeship or you do your training, and you come out and then try and apply it in practice, and it's a struggle. And you think, what the hell am I doing? And I've probably screwed up just as many golf swings early on in my own coaching career, but I always tell the trainees that the stuff that you're giving them even early on is always better than what they're doing at that time. So even though you go back 10 years or 20 years and think back, and what the hell was I doing? You are improving those people. You are giving them something that's an improvement on what they're doing at that time. So
that's it. Most people haven't spent the time to learn what you guys have learnt or what I'd learnt, and so they were still better off.
Yeah, for sure.
But I believe that the courses at university are probably becoming in some ways a bit more applied.
Okay.
So I noticed that the allied health practitioners that come out of uni now are kind of ready to go, which I wasn't. but
Okay.
learnt quickly because I had to.
You have to, yeah. And
yeah.
if you're out there as a subcontractor, I'm guessing in a fitness environment, if you aren't doing a decent job, you're not going to get the clients, you're not going to get the money coming in.
Exactly.
So you have to do it. So obviously you had a bit of interest in golf before you've specialised in that golf area. So being at a golf course all the time, but what was the switch to make golf your speciality?
It's a really good question, and I actually do have a half decent answer.
Great.
So it was 2001. So I just left the gym.
I was out trying to be a tour player in 2001. That didn't last very long.
There you go. Well, so you might know this fella who probably did a little bit better than you by the sound of it.
I'm sure he did.
But a bloke called Marty Doyle just walked in the door at my clinic in Sorrento and said he must have, I don't know how he heard about me. It was really weird. I can't even remember how he found me, but was like, I want you to get me fit for golf. And he had some tour status at the time, and I thought this was pretty exciting. And I actually was still working, I think, every third Sunday at the golf course, just keeping the dream alive for another couple of years.
Yeah, that's it.
And so I still and I was like, oh, it's interesting. I'm sort of still working in golf. So I trained him, and he was a really diligent trainer, just did all the right things. Great first client to have in terms of, someone who really wanted to be an athlete. I might have had one or two sort of semi-serious athletes before that working at the gym.
Okay.
But it was the first, fair income person I could watch on TV playing and that sort of thing. And it was like, wow. So I really threw all my eggs into that basket. It was a great opportunity. I've always been...
Just don't screw him up.
Well, yeah, I've always been... I probably did. Sorry, Marty. I've always been just a competitive person myself. And... but, even at that age, probably thought, I don't think I'm good enough at anything to actually do it myself.
Yeah.
So, someone that's having a crack and trying to make a living out of it, I thought, well, that's pretty close. So, and there's probably a lot of people in the industry, really, isn't it? We didn't quite make it ourselves.
Yeah.
We love we like the process. We don't mind the hard work. So if we can help other people, we do, because it's kind of fun. So, and then a couple of his mates came in, and so another couple of pros that I was working with, really good fellas. And then a couple of years went by, and I wanted to continue learning more about that. And God knows how I found it, because the internet was still pretty slow back then, wasn't it?
It would have been. Plug into the phone socket.
Used Alta Vista or Yahoo search or something, something, as the page peeled down, I saw a course with the AIS service providers for the golf program. So Mark Holland. Yeah, I think it was Mark Holland.
Mark would have been. Was it
Dennis McDade's name was on it, but I don't think he was actually there on the day. And it was Ramsey McMaster.
Would have been Ross Herbert back then as well.
I think it was just a couple of years after Ross, actually.
Yeah, he could have maybe just passed away.
Yeah, I think he passed away in 2001, didn't he? Because I remember the thing on the wall down there. Anyway, so this is 2003, and
so guys like obviously Mark Holland.
Yes, it was Marco
and
Ramsey.
Would have been.
I think that was
Gareth Jones, maybe as assistant coach.
Oh, they were in the AIS. They were working in the AIS program at the time for sure. But just this weekend, it was a weekend course. Okay. Yep, they ran an actual course, and that was great. Really good fun, and I learned a lot and started using that information. And so I'd heard of Ramsey through Marty, because Marty had seen him a couple of times, and I'd seen the video and heard the accent, and I was like, what's going on here?
Great guy, cool
He's
guy.
Seeing stuff I can't see, even in this video. Oh, look, that's not right. That's not right. And I'm like, what's he looking at?
That's a pretty good Scottish accent. Yeah. You've done well.
Well, yeah, I've copied him, basically. And anyway, so then a couple of years goes by, and it's now 2005, and Russell Jarrett was the strength and conditioning coach in the AIS program, and he was working with tennis and golf, and the AIS golf program relocated from Sandringham to Moona Links.
Yep.
Somewhere there. And it was difficult for him to travel down from the city and look after both sports. Mm-hmm. So all of a sudden there was an opening, and I think I got the heads up to apply for the job just by hearing that it was available. And I applied for the job for strength and conditioning coach for the AIS golf program, and I got it. So then all of a sudden, 2005, I'm strength and conditioning for the AIS golf program,
right,
and learned off guys like, again, obviously Mark Holland was the head coach, Ryan Lumsden. My head was just spinning with the information that was coming from him. So I knew I had a lot to learn, and obviously Ramsey was a big part of that there as well. Just hope I'm not forgetting people. And then 2006 was a few other people come on board. So Matty Cutler came on board. Tony Meyer came on board as the assistant coach or the scholarship coach. Yep.
He beat me for that role, by the way.
Oh, did he? Not my fault.
I was beaten twice. I got beaten by Tori O'Connor, the first one.
Yes.
Prior
to Tori was at Sereno there for a while too, I think.
So prior to Tony, she beat me for that role, and then Tony beat me as well. So all good.
Well, I sort of had good luck early in my career, and then I find as I'm getting older and better, it's actually getting harder, which is weird, but still, that's okay. So I mean, it was really just kind of kicked on and evolved and changed a lot year on year from there. But I was kind of I was kind of in it then.
Yeah,
really.
And then it just expands from there because as our understanding of golf changes, then obviously how you train it changes as well.
Yeah.
So just on that, what the big change, or what's the biggest change you had to make as a trainer from training average Joe in the gym to now training high level athletes in golf? Was there a huge change?
So what are the key differences?
Yeah,
probably one of so I've just got as we were talking about before the podcast started, I've got my head so far in the weeds at the moment with my PhD research. So I'm doing sort of part of my lit review, and I've literally got 250 peer-reviewed articles that I'm sifting through with a reasonably fine-tooth comb and pulling out all the findings from and putting it together in a bit of an analysis. So I'm constantly finding information that I go, wow, I didn't know this.
Yeah.
I wonder how many other people have got this even as one little concept in their mind as being a priority.
Yeah.
So translating the science to the practitioners is going to be a real focus of mine, and I'm probably jumping ahead too far with things you want to talk about later. But so it's kind of a hard question to answer right now because there's so many things. But there was one article that I read recently where I went, you know what, that's a pretty good summary, and that is that range of motion and power/force contribute relatively equally to distance, ball speed, club head speed.
Okay.
So what it means is, to me, is that you should definitely get them more stronger and more powerful. And when I say strength, I mean that in two ways. I mean that in maximal force, but also mean no weaknesses in the body so that they don't get injured.
Okay.
So needing to understand the forces that they experience in the golf swing to make sure that their body, and then, targeting those muscle groups to make sure they're not going to break down, because there's actually more force in the golf swing than people think.
Yeah, definitely.
So they need to be strong, they need to be powerful, but that kind of goes for everyone. But here's the kicker. You can't lose range of motion whilst doing that.
You have to have both.
Because there's an equal contribution between range of motion and strength and power.
That makes sense.
So if you get someone 20% stronger and you rob them of 20% of their range of motion through their strength training, which, by the way, you'd really have to stuff it up
to do that.
Basically, bad technique will do that for you.
Yeah, exactly. He gets short.
You get adaptive shortening, the muscles you don't want. It doesn't allow proper range of motion. The joints don't sit flush in the center of the sockets or the grooves, depending on the type of joint. So, theoretically, get them 20% stronger, but lose 20% range of motion, you've achieved nothing.
It's just,
So
back to square one.
Basically, we want to maximize their flexibility for them individually. And this is where I think possibly flexibility has been overstated in golf. Well, that's funnily enough.
I was actually going to head to that.
Yeah.
So probably early on when you first got out there and started working in golf, and me as a golfer myself was taught early on, don't do strength training, flexibility work.
Just stretch.
Just stretch.
Maybe wrist curls.
Get flexible. get your grip strength up, and that was basically it. But these days, and even in physical training in general, we're starting to understand that sitting on a cardio bike isn't the best way to get slimmer or to get fitter. You have to incorporate strength training in your training.
Yeah, and it's a hard one because the more comprehensive your program is, the better it is, right?
Yeah, for sure.
But you need help to get to that point, and I kind of look at it, I'm realistic about it. Like if someone's going to spend 2 half-an-hour sessions a week looking after their body, what's the best way for them to spend that?
Yeah.
If they have 2 1-hour sessions, what would that look like? If it's 3 1-hour sessions, what would that look like?
Okay.
Now, I think most pros, even if most players, but even if you were a tour player that was really serious about reaching their potential, there's so much you can do with 3 1-hour sessions a week.
Yeah.
If you were to do that for 12 months, you'd still be improving after 12 months.
Even after that.
So, that would probably buy you 2 to 3 years worth of improvement. You don't need to go crazy, but you need to do the 3 1-hour sessions a week, not drop it like a hotcake for 6 weeks, come back. And it's just the consistency, I understand, is difficult when you're traveling and you're on the road. But if it were me, knowing what I know and I was a tour player trying to make a living out of it, I would be doing it.
If it gives you that little 0.5% gain on the rest of the
Like
field.
injured, for example.
Yeah, definitely.
So, but obviously you need to pick and choose what you're doing pretty carefully, ideally based on the screening. And this is the way that I guess practitioners in Australia that have worked in a group setting, which we're reasonably good at doing, it's always going to be based off of screening. Now, what's in that screening, I'll be hopefully having some influence on over the next couple of years with some new things that we're finding. But just any screening to determine where are they restricted, where are they weak, that's going to get you a long way.
Yeah, for sure. So it's an evolving space, and
absolutely,
it is very cool. So, what's the biggest misconception that the average player has out there with tied into golf fitness? So you got the average golfer that goes to the gym. What are they doing wrong that they shouldn't be doing in that training?
Okay, so the ones that are actually going to the gym?
Yes,
so the ones that are...
So there's I'm sure there's heaps out there that don't do it.
Misconception is you don't have to do it.
Yeah. So
that's pretty bad.
Get in there to start with, and then if they get in there and start,
so
how do they screw it up?
So if someone's in there doing 3 1-hour sessions a week, right? Now, I mean, there's some doing more than that, and that's fantastic. But let's just be realistic. They're doing 3 1-hour sessions a week in their off weeks. This is not when they're playing. And I'm like, well, that's great. Now, number one, I'd be like, you know what? It's great that they're doing it because they've got a routine, they've got a habit, they've got a structure in place. It's easier for me, someone like me, to come along and go, great, we just swap that out and put that in. Swap that out and put that in. See the way you're doing that. There's nothing wrong with the exercise. It's the way you're doing it, for example.
Okay.
So it's honestly, it's the lesser of the two evils. I don't view it as a problem. I look as a good opportunity. I'm like, wow, this person's actually got the motivation to train. They're doing it. Let's just make it better.
Yep.
So there'd be a lack of rotational exercise.
Okay.
Which is really weird because
straight line type exercises.
Yeah, like your typical gym program. And often it might be that they train with guys who are really keen on the gym, the younger guys, and their mate loves training, so they do the same stuff that he does. And it might be, and typically strength training is straight up and down, straight back and forward, and there's no rotation. And we know from the research that, like for example, the cable golf chop, which I've actually got in trouble for this exercise before, but I'm going to hit back because Let's
go for it.
There's been a couple of I hope I'm allowed to be controversial. I won't swear though. No, not on episode 1.
No.
It's a non-swearing one.
We kind of try and keep it clean.
Let's keep it clean. This is good. Just in case my kids listen. So the golf cable chop, which is essentially like a wood chop exercise on the cable, but done often with a rope and down to impact position.
Okay.
That's the highest correlating exercise with increasing driver club head speed.
Okay.
More than squat. More than deadlift. It was compared to bench press. It was compared to a few different strength exercises, and that one, because it's specific.
Yeah, it's a golf swing type movement, isn't it?
Yep. Now, why it's controversial and why I've got in trouble for this exercise before is because if a player has a bit of a technique flaw in their swing that they're trying to work on, the coach is desperately trying to get them to move differently, come from the inside, whatever it might be.
If there's sequencing wrong, for example.
Correct. Exactly.
And they drag that sequencing error across to the exercise.
Now, I would argue, well, they've been doing it like that anyway. At least they're getting stronger now.
Yep.
But there's obviously a missed opportunity there. The player can actually use the mirrors in the gym. They don't have the complication of trying to hit the ball to a target. They can actually get the sequence that the coach wants into that drill.
Yeah. Well,
To me, that's not that difficult.
I'm curious too. If you add, obviously, swinging a golf club is quite a light club, and you're swinging that. If you add a bit of extra weight to that movement, wouldn't the natural type body movement come into play more often, and the sequencing may improve?
Because it has to be more efficient?
Because
it's harder?
Yeah, because you actually are shifting more weight.
Oh, look, I won't lie. I've seen people do it wrong.
Yeah.
Right? Like, and it's basically they're just doing another 10 reps, 2 sets either side of the 400 reps that they've done in the driving range. So why are you picking on the 20 reps that are in the gym that are going to potentially prevent injury? But I agree. I would much prefer to see them sequencing properly and using the positions that their coach is working on. And to me, that's just an education thing. It's not that hard to overcome. How did we get onto that one? So the importance of rotational exercises, but better if they're done correctly.
Yeah, for sure.
Correctly, whatever that is.
But again, it comes down to golf swing. It comes down to everything. If you aren't doing it properly, then it's not going to be of the most possible benefit to your change.
Yeah, and if a player's in the gym to improve their body for golf, provided they're reasonably well supported with coaching, etc., they should probably make the link.
You would hope so.
I would think so.
You would hope so.
Anyway.
Sounds good. Now, you weren't overly keen on talking on this, but I'm going to bring it up anyway. So I'm going to throw you in the deep end. And as we said before, you start off in a certain field and you improve as you go along. So you published a book.
Yes.
And I've got that book at home.
I like the way you led in there. That's nice. I'll let you talk about it now.
And I use that with my students at the time, and
thank you.
And I think it had some great stuff in it for the time that it came out. And obviously things evolve over time, and golf coaching is the same. And we go back to theories of books that we looked at 10 years ago and think, what the hell was I doing teaching that rubbish?
Pre-Trackman or pre-D-plane or...
Yes, for sure.
Hang on a minute. But yeah.
So things evolve over time. So you have to be proud of the fact that you published a book. So don't...
Yeah, that was good. And I've got to thank my brother-in-law for that.
That's where I was going to go with that one. So you've gone through the family there with that. That came through the brother-in-law. Yep. What was the aim of publishing that book when you first put it out there?
It's a really good question. So my brother-in-law was a journo for the Herald Sun for 15 years, and since gone on, he's actually now working with the new basketball team, Southeast Phoenix.
That's the wrong team. That's the wrong team.
I'm on board, mate.
No,
I'm on board. We're rising out of the ashes, and they beat United in their first game.
Was not happy about that.
I was pleasantly surprised. So anyway, so he's a good writer, and look, he was going through a phase of writing. I think he published about 10 books in about 3 or 4 years. It seemed to me anyway, and it was just like, well, let's do one on golf fitness. That's what you do. And we both loved golf. And back then we were playing a lot more than what we are now. The kids were like really little, and then we smartened up our act and stopped playing golf and actually parented our kids instead.
Yeah.
But, we're pretty keen on our golf. And so I put together, a bunch of exercises. But look, the challenge for me was, how do we make this user-friendly, easy to read, so that any club golfer can pick it up and get some benefit out of it. And we used like a bogey, par, birdie system, so you could actually screen yourself with some basic physical tests.
I think I might have seen something like that in some of Ramsey stuff at some point in time.
I probably ripped off half of Ramsey stuff. Sorry to the great man.
No, that's good.
And look, it was good. We actually sold, 3,000 copies or something. Like it actually did okay, and it was a good experience for me to just see what's involved with that and see how the agent plays their role and how they get it into bookstores. We're in all the bookstores, probably just before bookstores really started getting smashed.
Yeah, now it's all online stuff.
Yeah, with Amazon and whatever. But it was a good experience. And it's just one of those things, like I've obviously put so much more effort into researching exactly what it takes to optimize physical conditioning, etc. And I look at that 10 years down the track and go, ooh.
Yeah, no, but again, it's part of your personal growth as a trainer.
That's right. But it was literally 10 years ago. So that was good. It was really good. It was good.
Is it something that you would go back to once you've finished this PhD?
Possibly somewhere down the track, I might try and formulate all of my ideas and systems and frameworks into like a user manual, almost like one that could be picked up by an academy so that you could do all the physical conditioning sort of out of, not a textbook because that's going to be crap, but something similar to that in a way, I guess. But you know, it just depends what market you're going to hit. It's hard to hit the club golfer recreational market and the sort of, high performance industry at the same time.
You've got to kind of choose one, don't you?
I think so. And I'd probably choose the upper end.
Yeah.
Probably.
In my personal opinion, if you're going to do it properly, you're probably better off going down that high performance as opposed to club golfer because it's going to have to be simplified and maybe made even too easy for the average player that doesn't practice, doesn't do any fitness work, doesn't do any of that stuff that we all should be doing.
And it's that same thing of, if someone came to me and said, I've got 2 half-an-hour sessions a week to devote to improving my body for golf, get rid of a couple of niggles, etc., what do I do? Well, that's going to be in the club golfer book.
Yeah.
If it's like, well, if we wanted to do it properly, test our athletes, understand them better, individualized training, understand, and then, how to track them over time and how do we monitor them and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. What does the science tells us the best way to go is? Well, that's probably more where I've been spending my time and effort.
That makes sense. So on your research, I'll give my other podcast a bit of a plug now. So we had you on the MFG show recently talking about the sweat study. So I won't talk about that too much today.
I stuffed up a detail there though.
Oh, did you? What did you do?
Smashed me. Mike asked me on the fly because it wasn't really my study. I knew a bit about it, but it was how much salt would you need to consume to get that certain amount of milligrams into your body, and I went, it was a certain amount of sachets. He's going, well, how much does it equate to in teaspoons of salt? I said, well, I don't know, a teaspoon per sachet, because that's what it looked like. But that's a lot. It's too much.
Oh, is it?
I was about 10 times too much. 10 times too much. So omit that detail.
Okay, I will correct that again
I've
with
been corrected
this week.
now.
Okay, so that's all good. So we'll steer clear of that one, but I can send people off to check out that podcast if they want to hear about the sweat study. But tell me about your PhD. Tell me about the research you've been doing with that, because obviously it's been fairly full on. You've been bringing golfers into the PGA Centre here to test them and get them back again and test them again. So tell me how you started with that, and tell me what some of the early things you're finding.
This is hard too.
This could be a long
because like at the moment I'm doing like a measurement property analysis of all the different tests that could be used in golf to actually determine which ones are the best.
Okay, so it started off as we've got all these fitness tests out there.
Yep.
Which ones should we use for golfers?
Yes, correct. So there's probably about 70 or 80 that appear in the literature.
Mm-hmm.
That either sort of, some of them, they show up as being correlated to better performance every time.
Yeah.
But it depends how you measure it. A lot of the studies take 20 elite players, or so 20, tour players or professionals, PGA professionals, and compare them to 20 handicappers.
Okay.
And go, what are the differences, right? So it's a cross-sectional analysis, and there's a lot of physical differences that occur that show up, which go, interesting. But if we take, let's just say, so some of those that would show up would be grip strength is a big one. It's really big for females. It seems to be most blokes probably got enough grip strength to get by, but females, it seems to be like a lot of them are just on the threshold and don't quite have enough grip strength.
Okay.
But we don't know if we improve grip strength in a group of people, how much does that then improve their golf performance?
Okay. Yeah.
Right. And is there a ceiling to that? So is it, so if I get some of the better people that were doing the grip strength testing were getting 60 kilograms per hand of squeeze, force that they could create. So if I take that, and that's a pretty good score. So if I take that person and really train them hard and get them up to 65, does anything change? Or did I just waste my time? Right.
And if there was, say, 2 or 3 areas that weren't as strong as they should have been, if you had improved something else, would that have made a bigger difference?
Generally speaking, that's my my starting point with training people is get get it like a radar plot of all their tests and go, where's the weakness? Focus, bias your training towards it. That doesn't mean don't maintain anything else, but bias your training towards your worst bits, whether they are flexibility, strength, or power.
Golf training is exactly the same. We skill test golfers, and we find that there's a problem with the irons or the short game or the putting. That's where we tend to go first, but we still keep that other training going as well.
Yep. So basically, I got 154 golfers and ran them through a battery of 22 different tests.
Okay.
And then did that multiple times, so that we'll be able to actually see how and had them in the hitting bay as well, hitting balls.
Yeah.
And we had like an accuracy test as well, so 120 meter shot to a target, see how well they could hit driver, and basically we're going to map it out and see how it goes over time. So most of the studies are either they get a snapshot of the good golfers versus the bad golfers, or they give them a 6-week program and everyone improves and the golf improves a bit. Great. It's been done to death. We know that. So what happens over the longer term, which is more reflective of what we'd be doing with a golfer. So normally you'd expect, them to be training for a year or 10 years. Wow. But, let's see if we can see what happens over a number of months. So ran that for about 12 months, actually. 12 months, yeah.
Yeah. So how many players did you end up testing?
154.
154 players came through that program.
Nice spread of players, different abilities and ages, male and female.
All the way from tour players all the way through. I saw some tour players floating around, so you've had some tour players in there?
Yeah. I'd like to get more, like really, really good tour players. But yeah, we've got enough to see how the different levels perform, but how it changes over time.
This is going to be the big thing.
That's going to be the new information that I can hopefully bring to the table.
Anything standing out as major?
Grip strength for females, and the med ball throws. So simple, but really, really tell you a lot. So chest pass with the med ball, sit throw. So we included some of the TPI tests to see how they perform, and to be quite frank, they seem to be performing pretty well in terms of the strength and power testing.
Okay.
Sorry, the power testing. So the range of motion stuff, we're still digging, but initially wasn't showing as much as we expected.
Okay, so
interesting.
Again, going down that strength path as opposed to
a bit more so. But that's not to say, that's group based data.
Yeah,
doesn't mean that we ignore someone's
individual
range of motion restriction as an individual.
Yeah,
and this is the big challenge: is how do we translate data and science and scientific findings into the practitioner?
Yeah,
which is I guess that's possibly going to be my role in a way.
Is there again, this is just based on my own personal experience and without having your expertise, but when I was coaching in Taiwan, I had a whole lot of kids that were ultra flexible. How would you deal with someone like that? We finally got them on 3D after working with some of these players for 6 months on slowing down the shoulder turn on the backswing, and she still had 110, 115 degrees of shoulder rotation. So that was even after 6 months of coaching to try and stop that.
Wow.
How would you help fix someone like that? How would you stop that type of too much flexibility?
Yeah, so two things I would think about there. So number one, I'd be just doing a bunch of stability-based stuff. So making sure that they have the ability to stabilize each joint in the range of motion that it's required.
Yeah.
So there's one thing to be able to stabilize your arm as you stick it out straight, but can you stabilize it in rotation?
Okay.
So making sure that you include in their program things that can become kinesthetic tags for them. So if they do enough strengthening work with control over that range of motion, then they've got something that they can recognize as a feeling when they're actually making the golf swing. So in a way, they become more coachable.
Yeah.
Because they know what the hell the feeling of stabilizing that joint is. And B, do they have the capacity to stabilize it? Are they strong enough to stabilize it? Because you're talking about teenage.
They are. They're 16 to 18 type age group.
Yeah. So they tend to be pretty floppy.
Yeah.
And the second thing is, how much do we need to restrict them? It's all about quality. You guys, this is right down your alley. Like quality rotation versus. So, just because they've got a lot of rotation doesn't mean it's bad rotation. Often with club golfers it is, because they don't actually have the range of motion to get into good positions.
Yeah.
So they end up getting all disconnected, and we could all agree that that's not what you want. But maybe some of these guys are just going to have those really awesome Asian dynamic swings that you get where you just go, that looks good.
That just works.
As long as it's balanced and, sequenced properly and where you want it to be, and the biomechanist is happy.
Yeah, that's it.
So
that was a real test as a coach for me to be able to see that and get that person to swing.
Yeah, to go, wow, this is different.
More like what I wanted, and I was still brand new to 3D at that stage as well. So I'd seen bits and pieces of Ryan's stuff. I didn't see a whole lot of it until there, and we had it tested in the States when we were over there for the States, and just to see how much, and again for her as a player, was her ability to see what it actually was. Yes. So I'm standing there telling her on 2D swing video that you're over rotating. We got her on a system, and she could see that there was 110 degrees of shoulder turn.
But was it the number, or was it the way she was doing it? Was she tipping and doing all sorts of things to try and maintain balance? Obviously, you weren't happy with it.
No, going back through it now as a coach, maybe it was more of a look thing for me. Like I was big on that time of shortening swings up, more control. That was my theory as a golf coach. It was still quite functional, even though it was an overswing and an overturn and across the line at the top. So again, this is prior to TrackMan data as well. So I didn't have any TrackMan data as well. I'm just going on ball flight. So I'm seeing a big shoulder turn across the line and 20 yards of draw on the ball flight. No. So I'm thinking that if we shorten it up, get them more on plane at the top of the swing, then we can straighten out that curve. So if I had access to more data back then, or access to other trainers, possibly would have kept it as it was. But she improved over the time. So.
And this is where I think, from a science point of view, we need to be doing cohort analysis. So I can't generalize the findings from 25-year-old tour players who are mostly Caucasian with 16-year-old Asian players.
Yeah.
You're not going to be using the same corridors, I don't think. And I feel like as a golfer, they've all got certain feels that they look for. And when you think about what that is, this is my personal opinion. I'll probably get shot down for this, but when you feel certain muscles and tendons stretch, particularly in transition, you're looking for that.
Yeah.
That's the familiar feeling of it stops there and it changes direction because it stretches a bit. They've got to go so far to find that stretch feeling. And that's why obviously in the gym, hopefully tightening them up a little bit with stability-based exercise. Well, hopefully they can find something familiar just a bit sooner. So it must be hard for them to shorten their swing.
I'll
be like,
show you this girl's swing.
I'll
show you this girl's swing one day. And you can
have a see what it's like. The fact that it was across the line and draw,
that's concept things as well, because
the work you guys do, it's not, I don't envy you, because what do you do? What do you do with that? Yeah. You got to make it work better, don't you?
Yeah, and it was a concept thing too. I turned up there and when I first started coaching in Taiwan and put these kids on swing video and looked at, they're all hitting inside drop 30-yard hooks. Yeah. But they're taught that from juniors because they're Asian.
They like draws that goes further.
They're short hitters. Apparently. I've got guys hitting at 300 yards average, but they're short hitters. So they're all hitting 20, 30-yard hooks off the tee. Can't cut it to save themselves. So when we said,
interesting, it's sort of a cultural thing.
It is. It was, and it was a concept issue with these guys, and trying to break through that concept. The fact that you don't need to curve it that much.
Wow,
was a real challenge.
Tour players I've known don't mind hitting a fade into a green.
Yeah, definitely. And when I tell them to show me a fade, they hit a little 5-yard draw. And they go, see, it sliced. I said, no, it didn't. But that was what they were.
Wow.
They were just ingrained from when they were real small to hit these big roping hooks.
Fascinating. And then Nick Bilowski and I have had chats about this. At what age and at what stage do you sort of go, let's just leave that swing?
Yeah.
Let's just learn to play with that versus the rebuild. And it's a shame that you have to rebuild because culturally they're being taught something that it won't work for everyone.
Yeah, definitely.
I don't know. We don't know those answers yet. I'm so glad that's not my job.
Well, I think with your research, we're going to have to get you back for a second podcast.
Are we there already, are we?
We're getting close to the end of the time.
You're going to give me the fast forward? We're going to skip over it?
No. We're going to keep you here to the end, but we're definitely going to get you back once you've published your research.
Thanks, mate.
So we'll get some more info out of you once you've got some conclusions. But on this podcast, I'm going to try and have 4 questions that we're going to ask everybody that's on there. So I've cheated a bit and given you a bit of a heads up on what questions were coming.
You had to.
So just to give you a bit of an idea, so we're going to call it the Fast 4. And the first question of the Fast 4 is, what advice would you have for someone starting out in your field of expertise, which is obviously exercise physiology?
Yep.
The advice for the person starting out.
Basically, I understand that most of us early in our careers take every opportunity that we can get. You know, we basically say yes to everything, and it's only been very recently when I've basically said yes to everything for 20 years. But obviously at some point, you know, you need to try and sort of narrow what you're doing. And I think the way to make sure that you get to move in the direction that you want with your career is to always have as clear a view as possible of where you want to be in 5 or 10 years' time.
Okay.
Because, you know, we obviously get busy with our work and we get busy doing things for other people, etc., particularly for an employee. But in those sort of 5 to 10 hours a week that we might have to continue developing ourselves, you want that time to be going towards where you want to be in 5 to 10 years' time.
Yeah, for sure. Okay.
So, and you know, one of my clients was doing a master's in psychology, and she was looking into people who achieved well at school versus the students that didn't. And one of the key findings, the key differences was knowing where they wanted to be in 5 years' time and having a long-term plan to get there. If you've got no direction, well, there's no urgency to change anything, and you just go with the flow and just bobble along.
Do what you do, and
there you are. In 20 years' time, like Mark Collins says, you've lived the same year 20 times.
Yeah, that's it.
Rather than 20 years.
That is pretty cool advice, is to have that end goal. So from a coaching perspective myself, I wanted to always be involved with high performance coaching, and that's why I did what I did with my study and things like that. So do you ever think it's too late to change tack or change path? I'm
still at uni. My kids think it's hilarious that I'm a student.
Yeah.
Like, even the other day, she's like, I've got to go to university. Are you teaching? I said, no.
I'm sitting in the classroom.
What are you doing? I said, I'm a student.
That's it. No, that is cool. That is cool.
It's a bit embarrassing, but you know, to be honest, I love having that little side project going. It kind of keeps me fresh and keeps me tired.
Yeah.
I hate being stale.
No,
I hate being stale.
That's really cool. Really good advice. So down that same kind of vein, advice for athletes in your area of expertise. So what should they be doing out there? What should the average club golfer be doing out there to improve themselves in this space?
Well, this is sort of general coaching advice, but I would say, again, it's kind of 80% or 80-20 rule. So 80% on the process and 20% on the outcome. I think you still need to know where you're going.
Yeah.
Know you're going to be in 5 years and that you want to be on this tour or have this status or win a tournament or whatever. But 80% needs to be on the process. And a lot of that, as I've sort of mentioned before, is getting excited about working on your weaknesses.
That makes sense. Yeah, definitely.
Which, it's really, particularly when these guys are basically CEO of their own little mini empire, being a tour player. Pretty lonely empire at times, no doubt. But it's pretty easy, I imagine, just to drift along and get out there and practice, etc. But are you actually identifying and working on your weaknesses? So that'd be one thing. Dedicating themselves to a regular physical regime would be another one. I just think it's one of the last remaining sports where there's so much to be gained by the person that is a diligent, regular physical trainer. There's literally no other sport that's left where you go, well, that stone hasn't been unturned yet.
Yeah, it's all been done.
It's all been done except for physical and golf.
Okay.
Obviously, the top end, it's becoming the norm.
Yeah,
but there's a lot of opportunity there. And probably the last thing I'd say to the athletes is this is not an easy thing because they need to access the information, but to use what the science tells us about more efficient practice. As I've been digging into the literature, there's just so much to do. So using practice circuits rather than just doing blocks of the same training helps the nervous system learn. So, for example, if you had 2 hours to practice instead of doing 40 minutes long game, 40 minutes short game, 40 minutes putting, you would do, say, 15 minutes of each, 3 rounds.
Yeah.
Works better. It's
Yep,
been shown,
definitely.
but it's just not known, and people copy the person next to them who's doing what was done 20 years ago.
Yeah, exactly.
So getting up to date with what the science is saying about practice, and as I know you're a big fan of this, but pre-planned, periodized, practice and physical regimes where you're
Doing the
going
right
from,
things at the right time.
exactly, going from blocks, technical block practice, varied practice, as you get closer to tournaments, match specific. And having it planned out so you can actually tick something off so that you have some tangible, clear sense of progress where you go, I did this today.
Yeah.
Because so often it must be untangible for these guys. And, they put in 4 weeks of hard work. They go play a tournament. They might play average. How are you feeling? Pretty burnt out by that, I think.
Definitely.
Whereas if you're actually engaging and feeling good about what you've achieved in your practice, to me, that's just...
Well, it comes again to what
Gotta
you said
feel
earlier with that process. So if you've got a training diary or a training log that you're ticking off processes as you're going through them, that gives you that sense of accomplishment that I'm going towards that long-term goal that's sitting out there. So I'm achieving those little steps, getting towards that end goal rather than just...
Because energy is the currency that these guys are living off when they're not... There's earnings.
Yeah, that's it.
And then there's energy.
Yeah.
And the energy is got to be getting topped up on a regular basis. And for me, it would be, if I get a list of a whole bunch of crap I've got to do, I'll make a list and I'll tick it off.
And it feels cool.
And it feels good.
great.
And this is really crap jobs that you're going to do, but it feels okay. Now, when it's, that's, to
Progressing
me,
through.
I would highly recommend that.
Yeah.
And if it's been laid out thoughtfully by their coach, even better.
Even better.
Yeah.
No, that's great advice there too. So, third question in the Fast Four is: would you change anything in how your career's progressed? Like I certainly would, as a golf coach.
Yeah.
I would have possibly looked at college golf when I first came out of high school, as opposed to doing the stuff that I did when I first came out of high school. So, is there anything that you'd change? And it's quite acceptable to say no. Everything's happened for a reason.
No, look, I've been perfect every step of the way. Mate.
That's it. You've just done it
let's
perfectly
move
all the
to
way
next
through.
question. No, of course, I've made many mistakes. Look, the main thing for me, probably the first thing, is out of my hands, but the much clearer, neater pathway to becoming an accredited practitioner these days than what there was back then.
Yeah.
Obviously, it's not something I could necessarily change, but I did never sort of anticipate that I'd be 42 and still a student. So,
Going back to school still?
It hurts when I say it out loud, actually. So, I could have probably had a lot of that knocked over. Having said that, I've been in a position where I was able to design my PhD research pretty much how I wanted to do it. My supervisor really understands the field, has been very flexible with me, and we kind of put it together, whereas often, if you come straight out of your degree and you go down the research pathway, you get told what to do.
Yeah.
So, in a way, I wouldn't change it, but yeah, it's worked out okay. But it's just tough from a life point of view.
Is that impacted on the fact that there isn't that much golf research out there in that in a PhD type standard?
What's that say?
Is because you got to choose how you studied? Is that because there's not that much out there in that PhD standard?
There's so much. There's actually so much. There's probably 300 peer-reviewed articles on golf.
But an article's different to a PhD thesis. So is it because?
So normally from a PhD these days, everyone's trying to publish. So you're probably going to publish anywhere between 3 to 5 articles. I might even get 8 or 9 out of mine.
Okay.
Over the long term. So, there is quite a lot, but the art of science is to pick the gap in the research and to extend further on what we currently know.
This is
and
obviously tied
the
into what you
longitudinal
wanted.
stuff hasn't been done. We don't know what happens to players over the long term, which is more how it is in the real world. You know, what happens when you train someone for a longer period of time.
For sure.
And probably the other thing is just time management and how to be effective. So, I through the pressure of having to get everything done at the moment, so trying to get a PhD thesis written, run my own business, work in the performance program here. I was teaching up until last year. Young family, keeping a wife happy. Which is not that hard, just pretty good.
That's the most important part, that is.
I just can't waste time. I just cannot waste time. Minutes are important. So
hence it took probably 3 months to schedule this podcast.
Still number one though.
No, that's it.
So for me, it's like I was always busy and I was always driven and I was always urgent and I was always doing stuff. But I look back at how I was in my early 20s, late 20s, mid 20s. I was scattered. I was so scattered and I never felt like I was achieving anything, but I was busy, and it's a recipe for burnout. It's not that satisfying when you're working that way. So for me, one of the big things I've learned in the last probably 2 to 3 years is when I need to do what. Okay. So there's I'm not going to go into time management too much, but it's even amazing that I'm talking about it. Like if anyone who knew me in my 20s would be like, you should not be talking about this topic. In fact, I probably still need to convince some of them now, but I actually think I'm a pretty good time manager now.
Yeah.
So there's A, B, and C tasks. So A, the things that are going to get you to where you're going to be in 5 years' time. B, the basically spot fires that are very important and urgent, but you wish they weren't there. And C is all the little crap that you got to do, but it's not going to really get you anywhere. You'll be if all you did was B and C tasks, you'd be in the same place in 5 years' time. So it's how to get to those A tasks. And for me, particularly with the research stuff where you've got to sit down and concentrate. So when I get a 2 or a 3 hour block on my own at home, when the kids are at school, etc., or in the evening, I don't do B and C tasks then because that's my only time to do my important A task work, right? So then I have to wedge the C tasks and the B tasks in the cracks and in the gaps. And that's just, I've got to be disciplined with that though, because it's tempting when you get a 4 hour, block and you go, I'm going to get all my stuff done, and you get all your C tasks done, you tick them up and go, oh, what a great job.
Yeah, I've done an awesome thing here.
Yeah, but really you should have been doing the other stuff. So trying to be discerning about that and sticking to what's the best idea, not just what I feel like doing now.
Yeah, that makes complete sense.
Yeah.
So the final question I've got for you today is where you can answer either or both. Mm-hmm. Where do you see yourself or your field in the next, say, 5 to 10 years? So,
seeing as I've crapped on about that so much, I should have an answer for this.
You should. I think you have covered this question quite
really
well as we've gone
myself.
Through.
No, like I said, to be honest, I still want to be a practitioner.
Yeah.
I want to
Do you want to stay hands-on?
Yeah. I just, for me, it's there's not enough people translating the science to the field.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, if I do that as a practitioner, it benefits my clients that I work with and myself, but it doesn't necessarily benefit anyone else. So I also want to be involved in, I'm going to be putting together some educational stuff, so some workshops, maybe some online education based on the findings and the research that I've been doing. So how to help anyone who's working with golfers, service providers, golfers themselves, learn what the science knows, get it out there. So there was some study done a while ago that showed that, so when you publish an article, right, it takes at the minimum months and months and months of hard work, toing and froing between really intelligent academics who know their area, and then you submit it to a journal, and the journal goes, no thanks. No. And then you submit it to the next journal, and they go, maybe, but you've got to change all these things. So then you go back to your 2 or 3 people that are smarter than me, and we write up this awesome 3,000 word article, which has got this great information in it, which is really rigorous, right? Because there's no rubbish in there.
Yep.
The rubbish just does not get through, mostly. Not to the good journals.
Yeah.
And 7 people read it, and they're probably academics.
Yeah, that's it.
So it's just not getting to the field.
Yeah.
So to me, that's a role I'd like to play, possibly stay involved with research to keep that process going.
Yeah,
so
keep improving it, but keep improving our understanding of it, but then being able to apply it as well.
Yeah. So translating it and getting it into the right to the coalface where and so to do that, I think I need to sort of have my finger in all of those pies. So ideally we can, keep growing the collaborative research that's occurring with, like, Golf Australia's doing a little bit more of it now, and, different golf. I think the appetite for research in practice is growing. Certainly is with my association as an exercise physiologist. We are, it's written in our code of ethics that we have to be evidence-based. So what is that That's a lofty goal, right?
Yeah.
Because you've got to translate the science into what we do every day with our clients. But I think it's becoming really common. So I'm hoping that
cool.
if that appetite grows, once I get past this PhD, I'll be able to continue in some role in that regard.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So thank you so much for your time today, Scotty. It was really awesome to have a chat and sit down and go through this stuff with you. I think that was great. Had some really cool information coming out of you. So where can people find you?
I'm glad I wrote this down. I actually checked to make sure that all the links work just before. So if they want to book with me as a practitioner, which, by the way, after my PhD would be preferable, but if you're really desperate and you need me, I can find time for you. I can wedge something in.
Yeah.
So you can book with me at pgaclp.com. There's a book now button and exercise physiology. Same thing with my clinic in Sorrento, so oceanfitness.com.au. Exercise physiology, you'll book me there. But we also have, and this is probably an easier way to get in touch with the research that I'm starting to translate and put out there, is my Facebook group.
Yeah.
So if you search, I think it's a private group, but you basically request to join and I say yes, unless you're a very strange person.
I can put a link to that in the description of the podcast.
Yeah, cool. So if in the search bar, I think if you put Golf Performance Science, so that's the name of the Facebook group, that's probably the easiest way to stay in touch, and I can share all the information that I'm finding with my PhD.
We'll get some good conversations going on there. So
yeah, it is. It's really good.
We've got a group so far. So
141 members at the moment, so
awesome.
It's growing really quickly. So
let's try and build that up. So again, Scotty, thank you so much for coming out today. Really appreciate it, and that was good. And we'll definitely get you back to go through your PhD once you've finalised it.
Yeah, cheers, mate.
Awesome, mate. Thank you so much.
Thank you.